So one way you can really help us as viewers is that if you know of anyone who is a pastor's kid, who grew up as a pastor's kid or an elder's kid, encourage them to share their story with us with the link below.
Many months later.
Okay, I think we have no responses coming in.
Clearly.
Let's not kid ourselves. So I think what we should do, right, is to actually watch some videos on pastors' kids. And I think we can understand why people are quite hesitant to come forward because it implicates their family, it implicates their parents, and also the church. And therefore, I think what we can do is that we shall watch some videos of pastors' kids and come up with a few points that we want to talk about and discuss.
Alright, let's do that.
Yep.
A few moments later.
Okay, after watching so many videos on what it means to be a pastor's kid, the benefits and cons of being a pastor's kid, we came up with 3 points. These 3 points spoke a lot to us about what it means to be a pastor's kid and what we as a church do. And the first point is this aspect of unfair expectations.
So when we talk about unfair expectations, we mean that a lot of the pastors' children in these videos, they experience people feeling that they should be holier, they should serve more, they should stay in the church forever, they should do, they can't step out of line at all, right? So they are facing all these things, and they come in forms that are often unspoken, and I guess what we're feeling is that the pressures are real, right? So why do you think there are these expectations being placed on children?
I think one of the things, as I reflect upon it, is because the congregation already has an expectation on their mum or dad as a pastor. And therefore, the logical conclusion is to translate that expectation of their parents in terms of how they should be like as a Christian to the children.
Is this fair for the children?
I think, obviously for me, I would think it's not fair because I do believe that each child or each individual has their own journey with God. But I think sometimes there's the expectation that because they grew up as a pastor's kid, their spiritual maturity has to be better than their peers. You know, like if your mom is a physics teacher, your physics you better get 100 while your peers get 98 lah.
Okay. So you raise this as helping us understand perhaps why this goes on. But seeing that it's so pervasive, right? We watch all these videos, and this is like something that is the number one thing that stands out for all these pastors' kids. Is there really something we can do about it?
I think at the end of the day, each church really have to grapple with their own expectations of the leaders. I mean, not just pastors, but even elders, children. And for me, I think the fundamental question I ask is that as I hear this sharing, I just simply ask the question: are those expectations helpful for the pastors' kids to have a relationship with Jesus? So the second point is leftovers.
And talking about leftovers, I think none of us like leftovers, but it does seem to us a very prevalent issue is that pastor children always get leftovers, and we mean leftovers of time, leftovers of attention, leftovers of emotional energy. When the pastor comes home, that's what they get, right? But until how you are a pastor yourself, hearing all these comments about leftovers, what kind of reaction do you have?
I think it's a very real thing because of the nature of being a pastor. The work can be quite emotionally draining, spiritually draining, on quite a few fronts. And sometimes, because of the nature of work, we work on the weekends. The way the children have to work around our schedule changes. It's just simply different from many other families to a certain extent. I get my off days on Wednesdays. That's when we go out with my children. But on the weekends, when they are free, when they don't need to rush for their things here or their spelling, that's when I may not be around for them. But I think fundamentally in this particular issue, I would say that this solution has to do more with the pastor himself or herself, and the boundaries that we draw as pastors. And I think this is a really very difficult topic about pastors' boundaries because different pastors have different conviction on how the ministry, what is the ministry to them, and what God is calling them, how to live their life in response to the ministry. But for some people, they may draw very clear boundaries and they may see the church work as work, and therefore they can draw very precise boundaries. For some, right, they see that they are called to be a living sacrifice, for the ministry, for the church, and to God. And I think the extreme of either is not good. I mean, you see yourself as a living sacrifice, you end up getting burnt. Your children are going to get the chao da version of you, right?
Oh man, that's horrible.
And it tastes bitter.
Okay.
But I mean, but I also don't want to go to the other extreme, which is to just see church as work and draw very clear boundaries. I'm not off, please don't bother me anymore. That's not the nature of the ministry that pastors are called to. We need to be available to the people as well. But I think it is then about negotiating and understand. I think not swinging to either extremes and knowing what are the important things that matter to the children and what are the important things that matter to the church.
Yeah. So you've spoken of the perspective of a pastor, and thank you for sharing your own experience. How should the congregation then respond to that, right? Because so now I have the pastor, and sounds a bit different from maybe my personal understanding, which is like pastors are there for, as you said, living sacrifice, 24/7 on call all the time. If I have something urgent, I'll call the pastor. How do I respect a pastor's boundaries?
I think one of the things that we can do, I appreciate a lot from the congregation member, is giving the space for sometimes the pastor to say no to certain things or to not be present in every activity. But like I said, I would actually place the responsibility more with the pastor in first understanding their boundaries. So point 3 is this aspect that actually being a pastor's kid is not all bad.
Yeah, so there are some clear benefits to being a child of a pastor, right? I think that's what we've seen, and that includes things like getting access to a lot more care, a lot more, well, in the same way that you are scrutinized, there are a lot more people who want to come up and just say they are praying for you, that they are going to give you something extra, etc., this kind of thing. So maybe, again, we will turn to Zhe Hao.
Yes, I think it's really a double-edged sword in that sense that because you have more aunties and uncles, you get both the attention, the pros and cons of having that attention, that they care more for you, but they also expect more from you. And it's a very real thing, right? Even for my own children, I see that it's really not all bad. I see the care that my own congregation gives to the children, both in material-wise and even in concern and prayers. And it's very clear. I would really say that the congregation, the members, do care for my children.
So keep caring, keep praying for children of your pastors. Keep giving them gifts if that's your thing. And I think that will be a community that a pastor's child would like to grow up in. Hey, so actually, do you think it would make a difference if this pastor's kid you're talking about is actually an adult? Like the age actually would matter.
I'm not expert in this. My children are just young. I'm still quite young. But I think I was just wondering whether this whole expectation thing that comes up the most regularly, that whether it came at the wrong time as well, where while the children are constructing their own identity, I think the last thing they welcome is more expectations over and beyond what they already have. So I think this part affects quite a bit. Meaning to say, if someone becomes today if my dad becomes a pastor, I don't think I'll feel that pressure.
Yeah, because you already know kind of who you are.
Yeah.
Your identity is already secure, maybe as a Christian or secure in other things. Whereas, a young kid, right?
I think so in that sense. So anyway, if you have seen our videos and you like what we are doing, please click here to like, and also click here to subscribe. And we hope to do more videos like this for you and for the church in that sense.
Yeah, and as always, don't paiseh.